In the history of Africa and the Arab world, there are figures who stand as beacons of courage, intellect, and sacrifice. Men whose lives were dedicated to freedom and whose deaths or disappearances remain wrapped in mystery. And among them stands Mehdi Ben Barka, a Moroccan revolutionary, teacher, and political visionary whose life and fate continue to haunt both Morocco and the world. For his story is not only that of a man, but of a nation struggling to define its path in the shadow of colonialism and the turbulence of the Cold War. And to understand him, we begin in Rabat in 1920, where Mehdi was born into a modest family, his father working as a tailor, and his mother devoted to raising the household. And from his earliest years, Mehdi showed a rare brilliance, excelling at the Lycée Lyoté in Casablanca, where mathematics became his passion, his sharp intellect lifting him beyond his peers until he became one of the youngest Moroccan graduates of his era. Yet his love for numbers was matched by a deeper hunger, for he devoured books on history, politics, and philosophy. And as he studied the stories of colonized peoples and the ideas of freedom and justice, the young boy began to imagine a different Morocco, one not bound by the chains of foreign rule. After completing his studies, he became a mathematics teacher in Rabat, admired by his students for his clarity and passion. But though he stood before chalkboards and equations, his heart belonged to the struggles outside the classroom. For Morocco was still under French colonial control, and Mehdi could not ignore the pain of his people, so he entered the nationalist movement, joining the Istiklal Party, and his sharp arguments, strategic mind, and tireless dedication quickly set him apart. And in the 1940s and 1950s, he rose as one of the movement's key figures, confronting colonial authorities, inspiring the youth, and building the foundations for independence, which finally arrived in 1956, when Morocco reclaimed its sovereignty after decades of resistance. And in those early days of freedom, Mehdi seemed destined for greatness, serving as advisor to King Mohammed V, helping shape the constitution and guiding Morocco toward a new future. But politics after independence was no smooth road, and while Mehdi dreamed of a democratic Morocco governed by the people, the monarchy moved to consolidate its power. And when King Mohammed V died in 1961, his son Hassan II ascended the throne with visions of absolute control, and thus began a dangerous rivalry, one between a king and a revolutionary, between the weight of monarchy and the voice of justice. And in that clash lay the seeds of Mehdi's disappearance. For he would not bend to Hassan's authority, he would not silence his call for dignity. And so he chose to walk the path of opposition, forming the National Union of Popular Forces, a party of workers, students, intellectuals, and leftists united by the dream of social justice. And his speeches denouncing corruption and inequality electrified the nation, making him both loved by the people and feared by the throne. Yet Mehdi's vision extended beyond Morocco's borders, for he was not merely a national politician, he was a thinker of the Third World, a believer that Africa, Asia, and Latin America could unite in solidarity against imperialism, neocolonialism, and exploitation. And so he worked closely with leaders like Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, Gamal Abdel Nasser of Egypt, and Che Guevara of Cuba, becoming one of the architects of global resistance. And by the early 1960s, his voice echoed far beyond Rabat, resonating in Algiers, Cairo, Havana, and Belgrade, wherever revolutionaries gathered to dream of a new world order. And when he took part in the non-aligned movement and later began planning the historic Tricontinental Conference in Havana, scheduled for 1966, he was placing himself at the heart of a movement that terrified Western powers and unsettled monarchies. For a united Third World meant a direct challenge to the global system of control. Exiled from Morocco, sentenced in absentia, and constantly under threat, Mehdi continued his work in Paris and other cities, refusing to be silenced. And while his enemies branded him a communist agent or a dangerous radical, his followers saw him as a symbol of resistance and dignity, a man who refused compromise in the face of injustice. On October 29, 1965, in Paris, Mehdi Ben Barka vanished in broad daylight, a disappearance that shocked the world and remains unsolved to this day. For on that afternoon, he was invited to meet two filmmakers at the Brasserie Leap on Boulevard Saint-Germain. Lured into believing they sought his expertise for a documentary on global liberation struggles, but instead he was intercepted by French policemen working with Moroccan agents, forced into a car, and taken away, never to be seen again. The scandal exposed dark truths about international politics, for the involvement of French intelligence, Moroccan officials, and possibly even the CIA became topics of investigation, each having its own reasons to see Mehdi silenced. And though trials were held in France and names were implicated, the deeper truth was buried under layers of denial and secrecy. Protected by state interests and the fear of exposing the true scale of the conspiracy, and so the case of Mehdi Ben Barka became one of the great unresolved crimes of the 20th century, a symbol of how power can silence voices through shadow and force. And yet, even in death or disappearance, Mehdi refused to vanish completely, for his ideas outlived him. In Morocco, Hassan II tried to erase his memory, branding him a traitor and censoring his name. But underground, his story lived on, whispered by students, sung by protesters, honored in exile, and internationally he became a martyr, his legacy compared to Patrice Lumumba in Congo and Che Guevara in Bolivia. His disappearance a reminder that revolutions carry a heavy price, and though his family never received justice, though the truth of his fate remains locked away, Mehdi became more than a man. He became a legend of resistance, a flame that could not be extinguished. Decades have passed since that October day, and yet his case remains open in the hearts of many, for new generations still ask who killed Mehdi Ben Barka, who ordered it, who covered it up, and why justice has never been served. And so when we speak his name today, we are not only recalling the Moroccan revolutionary who vanished, we are remembering a man who believed in justice without borders, who sought freedom not only for his own people, but for the oppressed of the world, a man whose disappearance revealed the cruelty of power, but whose legacy reveals the resilience of hope. And though his enemies thought they silenced him in Paris in 1965, they only transformed him into a timeless symbol. And as we share his story here, we honor not only his life, but the countless others who stood against tyranny and paid with silence. And if this story has moved you, if you wish to hear more untold histories of Africa and the world, subscribe and join us. Because the story of Mehdi Ben Barka is only one of many voices that continue to echo through time. And together we can keep their memories alive and their dreams burning.